Hello, ladies and
Dickosaurus.
gentlemen. We are back, and as promised, Rob Hutchinson is here, as well as Gideon Joubert from DRSA. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Great. Absolutely great.
I can't
And
complain.
you,
It's
I
great
should
to
ask
be
how.
here. To see, I was about to say this is the second time I'm seeing Rob in like 24 hours, so it's lovely. Third time actually, third time. Joe, how?
I'm good. I'm good, man. It's great to see you guys both again. Gideon, I was actually I wasn't well. You weren't on the bill, if I can put it that way. And then you asked if you could hop on quickly. I was like, sure. Do you want to stay the hour? You said sure. I think it's great. But just so you know, Gideon, we need to chat as well because I spoke to Ian last week, and I want to have a panel discussion on a Tuesday evening with the both of you. We chat about guns and questions that people might have about guns. I'm just putting it out there. You don't have to answer now, but I'm
Oh,
just letting
that's
you know.
Tuesday, tomorrow night or next Tuesday? I'm just
No,
checking.
I haven't figured out which Tuesday yet.
Okay, no, that's cool
Yeah.
because I'm super flexible these days, but we could. I do appreciate more than 24 hours notice, but
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to roll with what you get. Life in the airline business teaches you to be have your roster changed at very short notice.
I'm sure it does. All right, gents. So let's get right to business. I was gonna show. Let me just quickly do that. I wanted to show. I didn't have time before you guys joined, but I'll show it now. I think you guys will be able to see it as well. DRSA releasing a can I call it a press release of some kind or notice or I don't know. I'm not sure what the correct term is, but basically legal action to end the national state of disaster. DRSA received notice from the Minister of Cooperative Governance NDZ stating that the government intends to oppose our application. This response indicates that the government has no intention of lifting the state of disaster. So yeah, who wants to start first on this one? Rob?
Yeah, I'll go first if I'm forced to. Yeah, so we put that out quite a while ago after we filed papers with the minister, uh, marking our intent to actually pursue a, a court case to end the state of disaster. And then about a week or two later, we received that notification from the minister saying that they are opposing our application to end it. So it's off to court we go. And in the meantime, Sora Ramaphosa made several announcements in the media stating that the state of disaster would come to an end. This was the final extension on in February, and we'd be moved over to the Health Act. And as soon as we got that letter, we were like, no, this is not the final extension. State of disaster is here to stay, and there it goes. This is actual proof that it is. If they were going to end it, then they wouldn't be opposing our legal action. And sure enough, the state of disaster will be extended tomorrow. So here we go. It's off to court to end it in its entirety, not just end the extension. There have been a couple of court cases in the past by other organizations to extend or to stop an extension. We're looking at ending it in its actual entirety. Enough's enough. There's no reason to keep us locked down and under such draconian regulations and so on. There's nothing to support it at all. It's really time to end it and open up the economy of the country, remove the masks, remove all the regulations associated with it, and get life back to so-called normal.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused, right? Because I think like with everybody else, we've seen a lot of the health minister coming out and saying, okay, these are the regulations that are going to go into the Health Act. One of them is the mask mandate, which annoys me to no end. Because even one of their doctors that they the ANC themselves revere and use as an example, or use advice, rather, I should say, has said the masks are useless. And this is one of their doctors that they've gone to consult before during the lockdown that's saying this. I forgot his name. But he said this a few times in articles and stuff like that, yet they're still keeping the mask in. But the point, the question I want to ask, and I'll come to you, Gideon, is this what you mean by the state of disaster is not going to end, or are they literally going to extend it? Because, like I said, we've been hearing in the news headlines going out, the health minister is ready, they've got this whole thing ready to go, the new regulations, but the state of disaster is going to end, but there is going to be some laws in the Health Act now. Or are you guys saying that whether you put it in the Health Act or not, this means that state of disaster is not over?
So there's a lot of technical points to this actually, and I was only made aware of quite a few of them today. And I don't know how many members of the public know this, but if you're not amending an existing piece of legislation like an act, if you're only adding stuff to the regulations particular to an act, for example, you have the Civil Aviation Act, and they have the Civil Aviation Regulations. There needs to be no public participation, consultation of stakeholders, the general public, any of these sorts of normal processes or oversight at all when you change regulations. In fact, the minister is empowered to, I'm not quite sure what the limits are to what extent a minister can change regulations. But in this instance, for example, changing the regulations pertaining to the Health Act, that's something that can happen completely in the dark and at the discretion of the Minister of Health solely, with zero parliamentary oversight and involvement of the usual processes, which is very worrying. But also then you have to say, okay, but there has to be a rational limit on this surely, but then that places the burden on civil society again to take what we deem to be irrational regulatory changes to court at our expense, get opposed by government who uses taxpayer funding to oppose this necessary litigation and tie the whole thing up there. The reason also why I can't tell you, oh, the state of disaster isn't going to end and it will continue forward in this form. There is no rational reason for them to end the state of disaster. The National Corona Command Council has no parliamentary oversight. They keep minutes of their meetings. At least that's what they informed our legal counsel of, but they refuse to release these minutes. There's no transparency at all. So there's a great amount of extraordinary power that is now wielded by the NCCC. And it makes, from their point of view, no sense to just simply let this go, right? I mean, if we need to go back to the strict definition of what a politician is a vote maximizing agent. And when you sit with a democracy as imperfect as ours, if you're not going to chase vote maximization, but you have found yourself in a situation where you are wielding extraordinary legislative power with no oversight at all and zero accountability, that is a wonderful situation for you. Absolutely wonderful. And you're not going to let that go easily. And that is my main concern, is the fact that we now have to convince a court that normal life is desirable, something that it's absolutely crazy, but that's where we are. And that's what we're taking on. And I think Rob has way more value to add in the specifics with regards to this, but we have to do this. There's no other choice.
No, absolutely. I agree 100% with you. I think one thing that, again, people are just concerned about is, like you said now, Gideon, this is not going to end. I think a lot of people do live in a bit of a bubble, or, like I've spoken to a few South Africans, they say, it will end, it's going to end. It's going to end. And it's like, yeah, they say so. But I mean, if we look at the ANC's track record, not so much. They lie all the time, and they take opportunities like this one to try and twist things. Because at the end of the day, Rob, you tweeted, you saw the regulations that were going to be put in the Health Act. And you were like, you laughed it off. You're like, where's the science here? I mean, like you were making fun of the one social distancing. I think we all saw that,
Mm,
where oh
yeah.
well, now we just have to stay 1 meter apart from each other. With no explanation. But again, I'll ask you a similar question, Rob. So let's say tomorrow, because tomorrow's the 15th. Tomorrow they either extend it or they say it's over. Let's say tomorrow they say, okay, state of disaster is over. We're ending it. But here are the regulations in the Health Act. This is now taking effect, which are the mask mandate, the social distancing, sanitizing, blah, 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 blah. Let's say that's what they say tomorrow. Does this change your
Mm,
approach? Does this
mm,
change what DRSA, your legal action in any way?
mm. Definitely not. We'll continue with our legal action and make sure that this kind of situation never ever happens again. And we will make sure that if the state of disaster is implemented once again, because you must remember the government can implement it any time they want to. And as we've seen, it's not based on any science, but literally just a thumbs up. And if you go right back to the beginning of the of the whole pandemic, the state of disaster was declared under the Disaster Management Act after there was only one case. One case. That is not an emergency by anybody's definition in any way whatsoever. So that raises questions right from the beginning, but it also shows you exactly how government can implement these things without any oversight, and then obviously establish the regulations that do encroach on our personal freedoms and contravene many of the pieces of legislation within the Constitution. So if they do, or if they do take the highly unlikely step to end it tomorrow, then we will continue with our action, put measures in place, make sure there's an amendment to the Disaster Management Act itself that states that it requires proper consultation before it can be effected. And from that point on, it will have to undergo stringent parliamentary oversight and possibly public consultation too.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad to hear that no matter what happens tomorrow, you're basically going to continue the fight because it is what it is. I mean, it's either going to be in the Health Act or it's going to be a continuation of state of disaster. I think, and Gideon, I'll come to you with this one as well because I think one of the fears that a lot of, well, some South Africans have is, and I definitely have this fear, is that we might see a repeat of the July riots if the state of disaster isn't lifted. If things don't go back to normal, where the economy can, for lack of a better term, breathe again. Because let's take businesses for example. Like I'll take even myself as an example. I want to do a one-man show or I was going to do a one-man show, or a show rather. My one-man show is still happening. Sorry, I misspoke. I was going to do a show at the end of this month, but we had to postpone it because our ticket price is so high that we feel that people are being discouraged to go to the show. So we thought, okay, let's postpone the show a little bit, and hopefully by the time we postponed it till September, by the time September comes around, there won't be these regulations anymore because our restaurant can hold 80 people, but because of the regulations, they can only seat 40 people in the restaurant. So you're cutting down potential revenue by half during that show. And this is obviously crippling a lot of businesses under the state of disaster and under these regulations. So, Gideon, do you think it's a possibility that if the state of disaster continues even longer, that there might be another repeat of the July riots?
Look, let me just be, how should I put this clear on this? I'm pretty much convinced that we are definitely looking, regardless, at a wave of civil unrest in this coming winter. The same pressures, think about this way, the same pressures that led to the July riots and civil unrest occurring in the first place. We're talking here about record-breaking unemployment, extreme degrees of poverty that has increased markedly over the past 2 years due to what's been done to this economy. The frustration with the political process, frustration with political, I'm calling, say, leadership in inverted commas, because we've seen a lot of things except leadership, at least in the pure definition thereof, Uh, we're seeing upsurges in xenophobic violence. We're seeing this societal pressure cooker boil over and over and over, and the that are supplying that boil have not actually been extinguished or even sort of turned down. So we're sitting with exactly the same situation. As, in fact, that's gotten a bit worse. The state of disaster and the arbitrary elements of it that create this uncertainty in the economy. Your situation is a great anecdotal example of it. Now take that and multiply it with a few million, in the sense of businesses cannot is ahead because what the National Corona Command Council is going to do in the next, in the next cycle. It's a plan. It has a huge knock-on effect with regards to how you structure things, price things. It is a mess. So certainly, if the state of disaster continues, if it is allowed to continue unabated, that uncertainty will just compound and increase and get worse. And yeah, I think we know how society will respond to the consequences thereof, because you can only starve people for so long. Remember, the Arab Spring started from bread riots. If you and unfortunately also external consequences of no control over the war in Ukraine is going to hit our our food markets and our food prices. It is too important agricultural economy for it to not have a massive knock-on effect worldwide on prices, especially since China has been hoarding wheat since about November last year in record-breaking quantities. We are looking at food price inflation. That is a dangerous, dangerous thing, something people should be aware of. And that is when people miss 7 meals, that's how revolutions start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a scary thought, though. And I pray and I hope that we don't see another repeat of the July riots. And then hopefully, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be worse. Rob, very quickly, in terms of this end of the disaster fight that you guys are doing at DRSA, is there anything you want to add that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I think what the public has to remember is that I think Gideon actually touched on this in the beginning there, is that government, or in particular the minister, can set regulations at any time without any public oversight, without any parliamentary oversight, without any interaction, or without any call to comment from the public. Which is a problem, especially under the Disaster Management Act, because everything, and we've seen absolutely ridiculous regulations, from banning open-toed shoes to roast chicken, and changing social distancing from 1.5 meters to 1 meter. It's really not based on anything. And don't for one second think that the minister won't reenact those regulations at any time. They are always there. The whole level 1, level 2, level 3 is a complete farce, because really nobody really knows what the scientific methodology behind that is. So it's really just a game that they're playing. And underneath the Disaster Management Act and state of disaster, they have ultimate power. So we have to get rid of that. We have to make sure that it's implemented. If it's implemented again, it's done so in a correct manner. And then be aware that the regulations will be moving to the Health Act, and then under the control of the Minister of Health, with the same kind of powers, which makes it even more dangerous. So we really got to get this under control now. And I know a lot of people might think that, oh, there's no problem, we can still work, we're basically not under lockdown at the moment, we can move around freely and so on. But that can change tomorrow. Literally, at the stroke of a pen, the minister can change that tomorrow. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it at this stage. That is the main reason we are going to court, to create a true democracy once again, because right now we do not have a democracy. So it's really a fight for to reinstate a proper democracy, which is a method of governance by the people through representatives. And those are our representatives who are out of control now and are not under our watch and our guidance. And there's no accountability whatsoever. So I don't see it as a fight to end the state of disaster, but see it as a fight to restore democracy in South Africa.
Absolutely. Gideon, before I come to you, I just want to get to some of the comments that are coming through here and remind people that, guys, if you have questions for my guests, you're more than welcome to ask. I do keep an eye on the questions, and I'll ask, we'll just have like a Q&A towards the end of the interview. But from Facebook, Corali, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. What government is doing and what's going on in everyday life is day and night. In most places, people are not social distancing. So what's the point of keeping the COVID rules when most people don't adhere to it? And I mean, this goes to what you both are saying as well. Like, I mean, even if they do have this in law, even if they do, say, okay, say a disaster's over tomorrow, but we're going to have these laws in the Health Act or whatever. A lot of people over time are not really going to listen to them, and only businesses will adhere to them because obviously they either don't want their liquor license removed or they don't want a certain license taken away or privileges or whatever, so they're kind of blackmailed into it. So that's just a comment I thought I'd bring up. And then Zach saying, Zach is from Florida, by the way. Zach saying, I think we need to hold Ramaphosa accountable personally. Of course. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, Zach. And that's what exactly DRSA is going to do. So please support them, ladies and gentlemen. And then Patricia also saying, good evening, folks. My two favorite people from the Twitter world. Hats off to you, brave gents. So thank you so much, Patricia, for saying that. It's greatly appreciated. So yeah, Gideon, is there anything you want to add before we move on from the state of disaster discussion?
So I think the one thing that's important to add.
Is that connection going again?
This.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
I hope I got you. Yeah,
there we go. Enforcing these sorts of things and whatnot.
Sorry, your connection's really bad, Gideon. We're not getting anything.
Move on to Rob, and let me try and sort this thing out and see if it gets better.
All right, cool. Yeah, no worries.
Hang on.
All right, yeah. So Rob, let's give Gideon a chance to maybe sort out his connection, maybe switch Wi-Fi or restart Wi-Fi. But I wanted to chat to you, Rob, about, and we'll get back to Gideon. But I wanted to chat to you, Rob, about the one thing that was released 2 weeks ago about the censorship, internet censorship. Which I think is one of the most ludicrous things the ANC has ever attempted to even try and implement, because they can't really do their driver's license correctly. They have to send their machine over to Germany to get fixed. Then the other thing is their DNA backlog in the SAPs is atrocious, and the fact that they even have one should be considered a human rights violation. But now they want to implement basically censorship on the internet. So maybe just in case people haven't heard what's going on, explain what they want to try and do and how DRSA plans to fight it.
Okay, see, what it is the Former Publications Act, which controls the way anybody who wants to publish a movie or a story or short film or anything in any format is regulated. So if you publish something, it has to go through to the Former Publications Board to get classified and under certain categories, and obviously adhere to certain age restriction and other ratings, censorship ratings, which is all fine, all well and good. But there are certain definitions inside there which are extremely vague. And the definition of content is one of the main concerns. And because content can be described as anything, if it's published on social media, if it's a movie published on the internet, if it's anything, a post that you make, a bit of a paragraph that you've written, or anything else, that has to now go through to the Film and Publications Board to receive a rating. If somebody complains about something that you've written on social media, and even in a WhatsApp group or a Zoom communication or Zoom meeting, then the Film and Publications Board will review that. And if they don't agree to it, then it will be a fine that is set out to you. And the fines are not small, they're pretty extensive, and they include jail time as well. So it's literally a censorship of what can be said out there. They've actually stated that it's to control what they classify as fake news and misinformation and so on. But there's no clear definition as who defines what is fake news and what is misinformation at all. It seems to be all up to the Film and Publications Board, which is really a bureaucratic body. It's not made up of experts or anything. It's simply a government division where someone, a government employee, can determine the future of you and whether you get a criminal record or not for making a post on social media. So the president actually signed the act in, it was about 2 weeks ago. And during that time, they've also released the guidelines associated to that act, and the guidelines explain how the act will be enforced, monitored, and everything else that goes along with that. So we originally asked for an extension on the comment period, and we'd never got a letter back from the Film and Publications Board. So we're waiting for it now to be actually published in the Government Gazette, and then we will challenge it in court straight away, because we've received so many complaints from the public through our public participation process, and it really is a ludicrous piece of legislation which shouldn't even be in place at all. I actually can't believe that the president signed it in. It's been an ongoing process for many years, many groups fighting it, and so on. And it went out for a public participation process some time ago, and it seems that all the public comments that were put in by organizations, by other bodies, and by individuals were completely ignored. So it's our duty to, as a public participation organization, to now take that to court and question why, and possibly have the guidelines either withdrawn or amended to some more more suitable means. Quite a
Yeah,
challenge, actually.
yeah. Well, it sounds like a huge problem because Ramon did a video on it as well. Ramon Kabanek from Morning Shot, and from what he said as well is that like any content you post, so any video posted on Facebook, YouTube, any social media as well, like you have to first, what they want is for you to put it through their little whatever thing that says like, okay, this is 18 because it's language and blah blah blah, or they might just say, sorry, we don't like your content, we think it's misinformation, and we're not going to allow you to post it, which is quite dangerous. And I mean, that's how hectic it. And people might think I'm exaggerating, but that's literally what can happen. I think what they even want to happen is just to regulate what social media, what people put on social media. And some people might think, well, that's kind of cool, because I actually shared a headline before you guys came on, was the Tresemme ad was actually not real. It was altered, and that's what caused the outrage, right? So in a way, you can see where maybe a bill like this might be a good idea, where you have. But then again, like I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth in my mind, because on the one hand, you think, making sure that ads like that or posts like that don't go out, where that is misinformation. That is the fake news. Where this post went out about this Tresemme ad that caused businesses to lose, like, well, clicks basically was blown up at one point. The EFF going out and trashing clicks all over the country. So a huge loss, right? For a business or whatever. But at the same time, you think to yourself, well, if you allow that kind of regulation to happen, where's the limit? And who's, like we've seen over the lockdown, who's checking the fact checkers?
Exactly.
So it's a catch-22
And
situation.
it is most definitely a catch-22 situation. But you know, as you just pointed out now, the truth eventually does come out, and the reality does surface, and it does it through its own natural process. We trying to place censorship on any form of social media is absolutely ridiculous. There's nothing you can do. You can't control it, and quite frankly, what they're trying to do is control what people think, what they say, and manipulate your opinion. If you can't see the dangers of that or believe it's not happening, well, just look around you on social media. You know, groupthink is pretty prevalent everywhere you go. Nobody has their own opinions anymore at all, and that's purely because we don't know what is real, we don't know what is fake, and there's the only way you can determine that is to do your own research and compare the facts. But we shouldn't be censoring anything. And another problem that they will definitely face is, how do they enforce this? Because it doesn't just apply to YouTube producers like yourself. It applies to everyone, absolutely everyone. And I think at last check, there's over 22 million people on Facebook in South Africa and around 7 million on Twitter. How are you going to monitor all of that? Good luck. Good luck to the Film Publications Board if they even attempt that. So it's a ridiculous piece of legislation that must be challenged and withdrawn.
Yeah, well, Ramon has a theory that they're not going to really focus on the general public, but they'll focus on individuals such as maybe myself, who they don't like, who constantly berates and attacks the ANC and calls them out for all their BS, and even Gideon
Yeah.
or DRSA or Ramon himself or Big Day Liberty. The list goes on and on. And certain individuals that they don't like that are not exactly towing the line, if I can put it that way, or
Yeah.
also
I think the biggest uh, people who face the most threat will probably be political opponents. What a better way
also
to
thought of
win an
that.
election than to silence your political opponent? And that's a absolute reality, especially as the ANC is facing a possible election loss in 2024. What a better way to manipulate the voters than through silencing any opposition. It's great.
It's a valid point. Gideon, you're back. Your
I am
connection.
I am indeed. Hopefully, this is a little bit better now.
It is. It is. Seems like a more stable connection. Sorry about that. If you want, we can go back to you. I asked you, if there's anything you want to add with regards to the fight against to end the state of disaster. So you
Well,
can answer
it
that.
actually, my point actually ties in exactly with what Rob was just speaking about, and we need to, as a society, collectively have a significant amount of introspection and then action upon the results thereof, because the regulatory framework in South Africa, where businesses need licenses to trade, where individuals need licenses to perform certain tasks or own certain things, or participate in certain activities. The whole concept of licensing is supposed to be grounded in the concept that an individual needs to have a certain level of competence to safely and responsibly exercise a specific right in a public space, whether we're talking about guns or liquor licenses or driver's licenses. So this is all the same thing. What it has become, though, it has morphed from that purpose into a political tool wielded by the political class in order to suppress dissent and to deny those that are deemed as unpersons, or whatever we should call them, politically undesirable individuals, to deny them certain rights and privileges that can be quite serious. as well as to threaten them with meaningful consequences that they can lose their livelihoods, they can lose their personal property, they can lose their freedom if they step out of line. And this entire regulatory framework that we have now, with licenses, with permissions, all this sort of red tape where you need to beg the government as if it's your parent for the right to do business, for the right to exist, for the right to defend yourself, for the right to be free to move. All these things are interconnected, all these issues. And it's exactly the same with the Forms and Publications Board issues. We again have regulations that are being wielded supposedly for, to clamp down on undesirable pornography, revenge porn, bestiality, all these sorts of things. And that angle obviously found great traction with moralists who thought the issue through emotionally and not rationally. And now we sit with a potentially massive can of worms as a result. And I think we need to go take a deep introspective thought of that, and more engaging of brain folks and less engaging of emotional knee-jerking, and we will all be in a far better place. This is our lesson, and I'd like us to take, I think, that forward, because we are empowered to do it. We don't have to take these shots. We don't have to be a passenger on this train. We can choose its direction.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And I think you bring up another good point about that. Like, people need to wake up. People need to realize that the government is taking our freedoms away bit by bit. And the state of disaster was the first step. And now with the censorship of the internet, which is, again, it's almost impossible for them to even implement, and they're only going to target certain individuals. Rob, you bring up an excellent point about the opposition. Who knows what content they would, censor from the opposition? Everything. And I think right now we had a comment from someone. Kind of a funny comment. I wanted to bring it up. Zach is in the States. He lives in Florida, but he says, if I donate to the company for the lawsuit, I won't get my bank frozen, right? Like they tried to do when he donated for the Canadian truckers. So Rob, do you want to take that one?
Bitcoin. That's all I'm saying. One word. Bitcoin. Don't need to say anything else.
No, absolutely.
That's it.
I'd strongly encourage. I mean, guys, links are in the description. Gideon was a last moment addition, so unfortunately didn't get a chance to put his Twitter details and his YouTube channel. He has a YouTube channel, Paratus. If you guys want to learn about guns and stuff, please go subscribe. But I will add the links later on after the stream, and when I upload this 1 hour section on its own, I'll definitely include his links. But please, ladies and gentlemen, Dearest A, the most important part is to go and check them out. There's so many campaigns, which is why I invited these gentlemen on. Which reminds me, Rob, is there any campaign other than the state and the state of disaster, as well as the censorship one? Any important campaign that you guys are running right now that you feel you want to talk about that's important to get out there? Go ahead.
Well, look, every campaign is important, whether it's a good amendment to legislation or a bad amendment. People should still comment on it. One that we've actually just launched today was based on a constitutional court win, the recent constitutional court win by Sarkelicha. So we, in collaboration with them, well, let me tell you about the case first. So Sarkelicha took the government to court based on amending some legislation that governed tenders and how they are issued. There's a piece of legislation that determines if your BEE status is not up to scratch, you're immediately disqualified from the tender process. So Sarkelicha took that on all the way up to the Constitutional Court, and they won, which is fantastic. So now government, the Constitutional Court actually said to Treasury, because it's housed under Treasury, that the regulations surrounding that particular act have to be amended to be in line with the Constitutional Court ruling. So that's a great win. But however, it's got to go through the same legislative amendment phase, and got to go by law out to public comment, where the public can actually put their input on it and either support it, disagree with it, or offer suggestions in how it can work to suit both the needs of government, business, and the public. So we're running that now also on our website, and then that'll lead to a further amendment further down the road, which applies to municipalities, because as we know, all the municipalities are about to launch their budget and the IDP processes, which will again determine how the municipality spends your tax money. But this new ruling will involve municipal tenders as well. So they'll have to amend their budgets and their IDPs and local legislation to suit that. But it'll be a great opportunity for the public to have their voice and support all of that as it goes along. And when it comes to the municipal campaigns, it will allow you to actually have your say in the proposed tariff increases and who controls the money. So what Sarkolich and DRSA are going to do together on that point is introduce a paymaster who controls the distribution of funds from the municipalities through to the actual suppliers and contractors. Again, there'll be an oversight function placed on municipalities, which will hopefully curb inappropriate spending and corruption that happens within municipalities, which is absolutely rife at this stage. So all of that is all tied together, and for once, it's actually a positive campaign with a good piece of legislation and a good amendment, but it does still require public participation. If no one supports it, then clearly it's an indication to government that perhaps the Constitutional Court ruling was incorrect. And that's exactly what we don't want. So we do need support on that as well.
Oh, fantastic. I encourage everyone, like I said, to go to DRSA and look for these campaigns and just sign up. And it costs nothing, right? Like you go on the website, you give a little bit of a comment. And for those who are watching for the first time, Rob, just very quickly explain what happens when someone, because everyone's always bombarded by petitions and blah blah. You're not a petition. We've explained this before. Well, your system basically sends an email to the corresponding minister or whoever's in charge of that department, if I can put it that way. And so every sign on. An individual gets. I saw, what was it today? Was it the end of the state of disasters on I don't know how many, like insane amount of signups already. So that person, I'm assuming is NDZ, is getting bombarded every time a sign up happens. But just very quickly, because we've discussed this before, but in like literally 60 seconds, just explain what the website does. Sure. And the difference between you and a petition.
And a petition. I think that's the most important part, is that we don't run petitions. A petition, if it's got a million signatures or one signature, it doesn't matter. Government will treat it as a single submission because everybody has agreed to the petition mandate. Whereas our system makes sure it provides you the opportunity to say, I either support it, I don't support it, and then you have to give a reason as to why. The system then converts it into a legally accepted submission from you as an individual, and it sends it directly through to government. So instead of getting a million signatures on one petition, we literally send a million petitions through to government, each from individual. And by law, government has to acknowledge and consider every single one of those in their final decision-making process. And because we hold a record of all those public submissions, we can challenge government in court if the final decision is not in line with what the public suggested. If it's drastically out of line, then we challenge them straight away and can amend legislation like that. So it's brilliant. It's a method of addressing legislation before before it happens and before it's actually implemented, because as we know, it's incredibly difficult and incredibly expensive to undo legislation that's signed in by law. So yeah, it's a very powerful tool that literally places democracy back in the hands of the people and keeps government strictly under our thumbs, and we hold them accountable because we hold the evidence.
Exactly, and again, that's why I wanted you to explain that again, because we got Vut here saying he didn't realize that, so that's amazing. We have another one saying, watching on Facebook, saying that's brilliant. So yeah, people don't realize that this DRSA doesn't run petitions, guys. Like Rob just explained, they really hound the government, and that's why I wanted to bring Rob on, because there's so many campaigns that DRSA is busy with now that that are important and you need to support. And again, it doesn't cost you anything. It's literally just commenting yay or nay. You put in your details and then you just press send, and boom, you get to annoy the government. So, maybe sign up to all the campaigns and annoy every single department. Gideon, I wanted to come to you. You're also part of DRSA, and I wanted to ask you, what, in your opinion, or what campaign that DRSA is running at the moment that you're very passionate about, that we haven't spoken about, that you feel people should know about?
Oh, jeepers, that is a very, very tricky question, because the end the state of disaster legal challenge campaign is becoming possibly the biggest one. But there is one that's still ongoing. It's still, I think, relevant, and it's pertaining to the vaccine passes and vaccine passports. And we've been trying to get that particular campaign massive traction amongst the student bodies nationally, because they have essentially been squaring up with a confrontation, or rather for a confrontation with the various universities managements around the country. And it is certainly a way for them to make their voices heard. It's also a wonderful provider of live data for them to reference in perhaps making a more rational argument than a pure emotional one. Not that there's necessarily something wrong with emotional arguments, that have their place, but if it's the only type of argument you're relying on, you may not get very far with it. I mean, we've certainly seen those things crash and burn quite badly over the past 2 years. So that's one that I'm quite passionate about. There's I don't know if during me being offline, we spoke about the Sakaliga one, which had to do with the amendments to the Employment Equity Act. That's also a far-reaching one, in the sense that for people who aren't aware what exactly it means, we're talking here about quotas at provincial and industrial level that could potentially have such far-reaching consequences that if you are a black man living in Gauteng, you might be barred from finding employment in the specific sector because there are too many black men employed in that sector, and you may have to relocate to the Northern Cape or the Western Cape or somewhere else. Equally, if you're a colored woman employed, for example, in the financial sector in the Western Cape, you may have to relocate to Limpopo for an employment opportunity. That's how ridiculous, overreaching, and arbitrary the potential outcomes of that piece of legislation would be. So go take a look at those campaigns, please. In fact, what I recommend people do with your morning coffee, click through our campaign page. The great thing about this, and I think one of the things that discourages people from participating, is they think that they must formulate some sort of intelligent talking point to articulate exactly why they disagree with a specific piece of legislation, or exactly why they agree with it. That's not strictly necessary. You can literally click through the campaign, say yes, you fully agree, or no, you don't, or you're on the fence, and submit that with your details. And it's formulated in a way that that is a legal comment, even though you just say you agree or you disagree without further expanding upon it. That is still a valid submission. So don't let the legalese, the technical jargon, and the fact that you may think you need to read through a whole government gazette to understand the talking points. Literally, the bullet points tell you the short summary. We're also speaking of ways of bringing in a short animated video of 3 to 5 minutes maximum to just talk people through what a specific campaign is about. They could even put it on in the background to just listen to it. But this is something. Make it a morning ritual. You can do your Wordle if you're one of those people. And with your Wordle, you can do a DRSA campaign submission, and make a difference to the way our country runs and our democracy.
Why don't you guys put a Wordle on the page?
That'd be great. A good idea.
That's a great suggestion. You need to charge for that idea.
Yeah. Greek government buzzword of the day.
Yeah, exactly. The answers can be like ministers of South Africa or whatever. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think for a lot of people that watch the show, they probably also watch Morning Shot. So when you're watching Morning Shot, just have DRSA open on the side and fill it in. Again, it costs nothing, guys. I filled in for the amendment to the gun bill. I did that one. Very easy, very simple. When is so this is a bit of a random question, but I know that some of my viewers like me to ask this to my guests. So when are you guys going to campaign for Cape Independence?
Good one. We actually, it's actually a great question, and it is something that's definitely on our radar. We've chatted a lot
interesting.
with
Okay.
CIAG, with Cape Independence Advocacy Group, and we're looking at running a proper referendum and getting the opinion from the public, presenting that to government, and then also looking at amending the Referendum Act and the various bills that are associated with that. There were a couple of, actually, I think there was one private member's bill put out recently to amend the Referendum Act, and that just didn't go anywhere in Parliament. So we definitely will resurrect that and then make it applicable to provinces and so on, to encourage that, with the ultimate goal of holding a referendum to see if it's in the public interest. And that's a buzzword. So that could be our Wordle buzzword first, is in the public interest. Because if it's in the public interest, then government has to look at it and they have to consider it. So yeah, that's definitely on the cards. And I must say, I do personally support Cape Independence. There's no doubt about that.
And Gideon, what about you?
Oh, there we go. Definitely. The more decentralization of authority and governance that there is, the better. The worst thing in modern history was the central government system, especially when we start disguising it as being a democracy. Just because we allow people to vote doesn't actually mean it's a democracy, because if your involvement in your own governance only comes around once every 5 years at a ballot box, where you queue for a morning, draw a cross, get a purple thing on your thumb, and then go and have a free cappuccino, and you're telling me that, oh no, that's a healthy democracy, I've got news for you. It ain't. Active citizenship, where you can hold your elected representatives directly accountable all the bloody time for everything they do, where there is actually such a thing as politicians resigning in shame and mortification when they make a mistake, where corrupt politicians actually get locked up, where you get to choose your local sheriff or chief of police. All these small things amount to a big thing that is true democracy, and unfortunately we don't have that. We have a fake democracy, and I think it's within our power to change that into a real one.
100% agree. It's communism. Let's just call it for what it is. Let's not hold any punches here. Again, I'll say it again, because like Cyril did this last year in his little speech for the birthday bash of ANC. He thanked the South African Communist Party for being an integral part of the liberation movement. And if that doesn't give you a bit of goosebumps and make you question a few things, I don't know what will. But anyway, boys, gents, we are approaching the end of the hour, so I might keep you for just an extra 5 minutes if you're available. But I just quickly wanted to give you guys an opportunity, each of you, to say anything that we haven't mentioned in that you really want to say, whether it be a campaign or just something in general. So Rob, we'll start with you. Is there anything you feel you want to get off your chest that you feel you really want to say tonight? Here's your chance.
Ooh, are you sure you want me to do that?
With regards to
follow me
Dear
on
SA.
Twitter?
With regards to Dear SA.
Oh, okay. Good. Well done for narrowing it down. Yes. Look, I think DRSA is there to assist the public and to facilitate the democratic process. We don't want to be the hero. We're certainly not the hero. The participants and the public are the hero. We simply provide a vehicle that'll carry your comment and make your voice heard in Parliament. And we were actually discussing today, Gideon, you'll back me up on this. There, that we got some good feedback from our legal team, and they said that we are literally the only organization that truly represents the public or the public's voice in Parliament and through the parliamentary process and in the committees and such, because we actually present the true voice of the public there, unfiltered, and send every comment through to government. So that was quite a nice pat on the back, and it made us feel pretty good and unique. But again, it would be nothing without the participants that actually make that difference. We just if we don't have the voices of the people actually participating, then we're just an empty vehicle sitting on the side of the road. But that's all it is essentially. So the stronger the voice, the more people in that vehicle, the better. And like you said, Joe, it costs people absolutely nothing. It's free. We don't charge a membership fee or anything like that. It's a free service to absolutely anyone who wants to use it and wants to play a part in shaping their democracy.
Fantastic. Gideon, do you have anything to add?
I think Rob nailed it like squarely on the nose. I'm just going to give my usual corny bumper sticker catchphrase, and it's the one where I say, it's the one where I say that tyrannical governments are not the greatest threat to our democracy, nor are tyrannical politicians, nor is the National Corona Command Council. What is the greatest threat to our democracy is apathetic citizens, or apathy among citizens. It is that disempowering curse that discourages people from taking active ownership of their citizenship. What we want is active citizens. We want an army of active citizens as opposed to well, you can't have an army of apathetic citizens. I suppose what is the collective phrase for millions of depressed, disempowered people who just stare into space? We don't want that. We want the opposite. And the best way to do that is to give the public feedback about the impact that they have and that they've already had and made through making their voices heard. And I think Rob beautifully summarized that there have been great successful campaigns in the past. We will be closing that feedback loop with our own live stream on a monthly basis, where we do this for an hour and we just take questions from the public. First we'll tell them campaigns successfully concluded, new ones that are on the radar or happening right now about launch or just launched, and then interact with people pertaining to what's happened. So this is important. And I would just like to encourage the viewers to, don't go away from the show with a feeling of despair, even though some of the topics were a bit depressing. You have the power to change it. It starts with you. And all that DRSA does is we're the vehicle to help you do that.
Absolutely beautifully said as well. And I second that. Please, guys, just go to the website. Like we said earlier, just make it part of your morning routine. Choose a campaign and then sign it. A campaign that means something to you, And I've seen success stories from DRSA, and no one should think that DRSA is some kind of, fly-by-night company. You're absolutely not. You guys have been here during the lockdown, before the lockdown, after the lockdown. You will be here, and you will continue fighting for our democracy. And I salute you both for the hard work that you put in, as well as the DRSA team who are behind the scenes grinding every single day. I thank you, and I'm sure our viewers thank you as well. So, gents, let's do one more round where you guys just say where people can find you. I have linked Rob's Twitter in the description. I will link Paratus or Gideon in the description as well. But just very quickly, you can let people know where else they can find you. So, Rob, you go first.
Sure thing. It's dearsouthafrica.co.za, or it's obviously the website, and then on Twitter it's DRSA_national, and don't bother looking for me unless you want to get a fright on Twitter. So there's a couple of people who follow me, and you can find it.
I think a lot of my viewers will enjoy what you say. I strongly encourage people to follow Rob Hutchinson on Twitter. He's great, as well as Gideon. Sorry, Rob. Is there anything else?
No, done.
All right, Gideon. Where can people find you?
So I'm not. You know what? This is the DRSA show, so don't worry about Paratus. We will have the gun talk on a Tuesday, apparently. You, myself, and Ian. So you can find me at Dear South Africa, or you can find me on Twitter if you really want to follow me. I'm abrasive. I'm controversial. I have a Marmite effect on people. But if you're brave enough, it's at Paratus 2014, and just come as you are. Like,
I don't know why you guys are so shy about your Twitter feeds. I think they're great. I think everybody needs a bit of real people. What you say. Here's the thing. What these gents say on the show is exactly what they'll say on Twitter, and vice versa. I think maybe they're a little bit more controlled on the YouTube, but that's because of YouTube. Not because of anything else. But they are great guys, and please go follow them. They deserve your follow, and you'll be up to date with anything that DRSA is up to as well if you follow those accounts. So please do so. Gents, before you go, very quickly, I'm going to speed through some of the comments that I just wanted to bring up very quickly. And, one was from Matthew. I thought this comment was interesting. What happens if the whole country ignores the rules? Are they going to arrest 60 million people, or are they going to go to jail? And I think a lot of people say that, and I think you guys would agree with that. Like, yeah, just do with that what you will. We're not really saying anything, but yeah, I think a lot of people have that same thought.
I'm going to interrupt you. Interrupt you there quickly, Joe, because you just reminded me of a campaign that we have got in the pipeline, and it pertains to unlawful arrests throughout lockdown, throughout anything else. And we will be running a survey to see how many people have suffered from an unlawful arrest or unjust arrest.
Oh, good.
And we'll be taking action against the state on behalf of those people. So, yeah.
Please do it before Bekele leaves, because apparently he's ready to leave if Cyril tells him to. So just do it before he resigns.
Absolutely.
All right. So there's some comments I already showed, but here's one from Germ, who was joined us a bit earlier. He's like, what is this YouTube channel you speak of? I believe I didn't say it. Paratus, ladies and gentlemen. Just search for Paratus. You'll find Gideon on there. And then, the rest of the comments I did show. So, gents, you may take your leave. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Gideon and Rob, I will definitely, I'm going to have you back on the show eventually. But thank you guys so much for sharing what DRSA is up to. I think these campaigns are extremely important. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned something. And gents, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, and thanks to your listeners.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Rob and Paratus, or Gideon Joubert from Paratus and DRSA. I hope you guys